Thank you all for joining us this evening. Here with me today, I have Harford County Council President Pat Vincenti, Maryland State Police First Sergeant Joseph Wargo, Special Agent in charge for the FBI Baltimore Field Office Bill DeBagno, Colonel William Davis from the Harford County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Jeffrey R. Gaylor, Harford County Sheriff's Office, David Ryden, Deputy State's Attorney for Harford County, Detective Philip Golden from the Harford County Sheriff's Office, HSI members Michael McCarthy and Milton Lynn, as well as Patricia Morin, the mother of Rachel Morin. Just moments ago, a jury returned a verdict of guilty on all counts: first-degree murder, first-degree rape, third-degree sex offense, and kidnapping in the state of Maryland versus Victor Antonio Martinez Hernandez for the brutal 2023 rape, murder, and kidnapping of Rachel Morin. This case shook our Harford County community and robbed a family of their daughter, sister, mother, and friend. On August 5th, 2023, Rachel spent her day, as she often did, spending time with her children and boyfriend, working out at a local gym, running errands, and finally taking a walk on the Ma and Pa Trail. Witnesses testified that her time on the trail was her peace, and she never could have predicted that on that day she would never see or speak to her children again. Shortly after entering the trail, Rachel was brutally attacked by Victor Martinez Hernandez, who was waiting in the woods. Rachel fought for her life as she was pulled 150 feet from the main trail into the woods. This was shown by the health data contained on her phone and Apple Watch. Evidence presented at trial proved that once concealed in the drainage culverts just off the trail, she was viciously beaten, raped, and ultimately murdered at the hands of the defendant. DNA evidence recovered from various parts of Rachel's body matched the DNA of Victor Martinez Hernandez. Despite his claims that he had never been to Maryland, the state produced multiple witnesses and business records proving that he was living and working in Bel Air at the time of the murder. Ultimately apprehended in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the defendant's phone was seized, examined, and found to contain multiple photos and screenshots of Rachel, Harford County news coverage relating to the murder investigation, and searches of her name. From the moment Rachel's body was found, my office has worked hand in hand with the Harford County Sheriff's Office on this case to ensure its successful prosecution. The incredible efforts of the Harford County Sheriff's Office, including Detective Golden, digital forensics examiners Waltemeyer and Marsh, Detective Wilsinski, Detective Smith, Captain Lean, and Sergeant Maddox, should not go unmentioned, as their thorough investigation and tireless determination ultimately led to this defendant's apprehension and convictions. We would also like to thank all of our state, local, and federal partners that played a role in supporting the investigative efforts that spanned 10 months to bring this defendant to justice, specifically the Bel Air Police Department, the Tulsa Police Department, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Department of Homeland Security, and Immigration and Customs Enforcement. We also want to express thanks to the Maryland State Police Forensic Sciences Division for their significant contribution to this case with the DNA analysis. Finally, I would like to thank my co-counsel and Deputy State's Attorney, David Ryden, for his assistance in the prosecution of this case. I must also acknowledge the tremendous effort put forth by my staff from the moment Rachel's body was found and the countless hours spent preparing this case and the over 500 pieces of evidence for trial. At sentencing, the state intends to seek the maximum penalty allowable by law, which includes life without the possibility of parole on the first-degree murder, a life sentence on the first-degree rape, and additional years on the remaining charges. It is my sincere hope that today's verdict brings some peace and closure to the entire Morin family. While no verdict or sentence can ever bring Rachel back, I am proud of the work that was done to ensure that justice was served and that Victor Martinez Hernandez will never again be a threat to another woman in his lifetime. I'm now going to turn the mic over for remarks to Sheriff Gaylor and our federal partners, and I will take questions at the end. Sheriff Gaylor.
Thank you. Good evening. I just want to start off by absolutely expressing the thanks from me as the Sheriff of Harford County on behalf of our men and women, particularly our criminal investigators who worked this case so hardly, and our Harford County community who, as you heard from Allison, were so moved by this horrific story and had the world, not just the nation, but the world following. When Miss Healy says that they were there working this case side by side, she meant it. They were there from the outset at the crime scene along the trail, working alongside our people, hoping for this day, preparing for this day when we would put this person, this monster, in front of a jury and let the evidence speak for itself, which it has, and in record time, what seems like record time, 46 minutes deliberation, returned the just verdict. So I want to thank Ms. Healy and her incredible staff. We have a great working relationship, and there are some cases in a career that really test you, no matter what your role might be, and certainly her coming in as state's attorney 2.5 years ago, this is a lot of experience behind that, but as the individual sitting in the elected state's attorney's chair, she was presented with this super large case. She sat there with her co-counsel, Mr. Ryden, and prosecuted this case and got the just verdict. I would say just sentencing ahead, but we know Maryland did away with the death penalty, which I can't think of any case more appropriately fitting, and sadly our legislature has decided otherwise. I do want to thank, again, you heard from me at the time of the arrest last June, the men and women of the Sheriff's Office and all of our allied partners, many behind me today, many who couldn't be here on short notice. But without that cooperation at the state, the local, and the federal level, working hand in hand with one another with no restrictions set on by silly legislators who want to be pro-criminal, but actually working for public safety, this is what you're able to accomplish. You're able to find a needle in a haystack, and that needle was this monster. The haystack was the world, and working hand in hand, working the evidence, working through technology and the science, we were able to find that individual and bring him to court today to face this justice system. Allison used the word closure when you talk about Rachel's family, Patty, all the members of Rachel's family. And we all know there's no such thing as closure. I also said this at the arrest. They have to live with this for the rest of their life. Closure would mean we bring Rachel back, and we all know that that's not possible. They have to live with the fact, knowing that this person who took Rachel's life in such a horrific way, that he will be removed from society and never allowed to harm another human being again. And that's what we have to take away from this as a success. But with the failure in here, and I don't want to, it shouldn't be political, but the failure here again is the immigration system that allowed this person to enter our country illegally and remain in our country and commit crimes in Los Angeles and then here in Harford County. The crime is the Kayla Hamilton case, also from this county. We need our government to work as efficiently as this investigation and this prosecution to work together and take the politics out of it and fix the immigration system in this country and keep our communities safe. And with that, I will end my remarks, and I'll be happy to take some questions at the end, as Allison said. But Special Agent in Charge Bill DeBano has a few remarks.
Thank you, Sheriff Gaylor. Thank you all for being here. My name is Bill Del Bagno. I'm the Special Agent in charge of the FBI Baltimore Field Office. Today's conviction is proof that the FBI and our extraordinary partners at the Harford County Sheriff's Office have a long reach. While nothing can bring back Rachel, we can make sure that her killer can do no more harm. This investigation and today's conviction make it clear to any criminals that if you're thinking you're going to get away with it, you won't. And the FBI and our partners will do everything we can to stop you. We will track you down, and we will make you pay for your crimes. We hope at the FBI that this guilty verdict brings confidence to the community and brings peace to Rachel's family and her loved ones. The FBI remains deeply committed to protecting our communities from violent criminals. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael McCarthy. I'm the Special Agent in charge for Homeland Security's Baltimore Field Office. Today, justice has been served. A jury has returned a guilty verdict in the case of Mr. Martinez Hernandez, who has been convicted of the murder of Rachel Morin. This was a brutal and tragic crime, one that shook our community and devastated a family. I want to begin by thanking the outstanding men and women of the Harford County Sheriff's Office. Their dedication and persistence led to the swift and thorough investigation of this case. Their tireless efforts ensured that the truth came to light. I also want to thank our prosecutors and everyone in the Harford County State's Attorney's Office for their exceptional work. They approached this case with the seriousness and focus it demanded, and they ensured that the facts were presented clearly and forcefully in court. It's important to note that the individual convicted today was in the country illegally. This fact adds another layer of pain and frustration to many of us in the community. It raises questions that deserve to be taken seriously about how we protect our neighborhoods, about how we enforce our laws, and how we prevent such tragedy in the future. To the family of Rachel, I know this day is filled with emotion. While no verdict could undo the loss you've endured, I hope today's outcome brings some measure of justice and a small step toward healing. Your strength and perseverance have been remarkable, and our hearts remain with you. Our community remains committed to public safety and to the rule of law. HSI will continue to work with our law enforcement partners at every level to keep our neighborhoods safe and to hold accountable those who break our laws, no matter who they are or where they come from. Thank you very much.
We will now
Marcus
take.
Espinoza with News Station.
Hi.
This is a question for anybody who may feel free to answer it. You mentioned how quick they deliberated, 46 minutes. Is there some poetic justice? Of course, there's not closure, we've mentioned that, but is there some poetic justice in, this happened in 2023, we're in 2025. When you saw a decision so affirmative, so quick, does that give any sort of sense of that poetic justice here for Rachel?
I think the quickness of the verdict speaks to the strength of the evidence in the case. This was an airtight case thanks to the Harford County Sheriff's Office and their hard work. So I think the length of the deliberation is solely based on the strength of the evidence in the case.
Were you surprised by how quickly they came?
I would say no. I felt like we presented a strong case. I felt the evidence was strong, and I felt it was unquestionable that the defendant was the person who committed this crime.
Ms. Healy, we saw evidence during this trial that it appeared the defendant had been watching videos on reports about this case. One of the screenshots we saw has you in it. How did you feel learning that he was watching as you were working to build this case?
I mean, I think those searches were in the last days, in the early June timeframe, June 5th through like the 14th. So I think it was really as the police were closing in. Those were cached images. So what that means is if he was watching a video, any image that appeared would go into the cache. So I think I think ultimately at the end of the day, I feel like he was trying to stay one step ahead, but he failed.
About parole notice, is that mandatory or is it ultimately up to the judge and sentence?
It's ultimately up to the judge. We have to file our notice of our intention to seek that, but at the end of the day, the sentence will be at the judge's discretion.
Can you speak to how important DNA evidence is in this case
So I think the DNA evidence was incredibly important. While the jury obviously didn't hear about the forensic genealogy pieces of this, because that was really just investigative leads that led them to the family members in this case. Obviously, the DNA, both on that side as well as ultimately when we were able to get Mr. Martinez Hernandez's DNA both through the clothes in Temple Hills and then ultimately his DNA swab. I think it makes it very difficult for a jury to find any other way when you have DNA evidence that is so confirmed on every part of her body, essentially, that was swabbed and tested.
How confident are you that no parole will be granted?
At the end of the day, that's the judge's decision. Obviously, we will make, we'll make our arguments. Frankly, we'll ask for more than life without parole, most likely, because the sentences can run consecutively. So, as I said, it's life without parole on the murder, it's life on the rape, and then some additional years. So, ultimately, though, at the end of the day, it'll be up to Judge Curtin. I will say, she sat and watched this trial. She saw what a violent and brutal and vicious attack this was, and I hope that she'll consider that ultimately when she makes her decision.
If you could have, would you have pursued a death penalty?
Yes, I would have. Yes. This.
During your second round of rebuttal, during the closing arguments, we could really hear like your anger and your passion. Talk to us about the emotion that comes from this. I mean, you're presenting the facts, but there's got to be an emotional level for you as well.
There is. Obviously, as you heard, I worked this case from the very beginning. I actually went to the crime scene the day this happened, so I've been in it from the very beginning. It was a horrific crime, and my sole goal here was to make sure that we got justice for Rachel. And so at the end of the day, I needed it to be clear that what the defense was arguing just, frankly, it was preposterous. And so we wanted to make it clear to the jury that it is obvious, and showing a little emotion is okay sometimes in the courtroom, and usually rebuttal is the time to do that, and that's when you commonly will see me do that. But so that's why you saw it. Obviously, it's important to me. I have built a relationship with Patty and Rebecca and Michael and all these family members. We've had many, many conversations, many, many meetings leading up to this trial. So not just for our law enforcement or for me, it was most important for me to get justice for them and for the kids who, I have formed a relationship with, some of them as well. So the fact that they'll never get to see their mother again, it was very important to me for them to see justice served in this case, particularly for the ones who participated, so that they could feel like they had some control over putting the person away who took their mother from them.
Just an opportunity here to maybe talk about, how to remember Rachel, who she was, because it can be caught up in the person who's now convicted for the crime.
Sure.
And that, of course, there was the victim.
So what I've learned, obviously, is that she has several siblings, all of which think incredibly highly of her. She seems to have had good relationships with all of them, obviously with her mom, who we've seen and heard from a lot during this case. I know that her children were devastated by this loss. It seems that I know that things like she was the best mom and things of that nature really came out. Obviously, exercising was important to her. She was incredibly physically fit. She went to the gym that day and then to the trail. I know the trail was a beloved place for her. From what I've learned, she has been known to be on that trail for years, doing this daily walk. So it was her safe place. It was the place she went to sort of have, I think Mr. Tobin said at the trial that was where she had her time. So those are the things I've learned about her. I wish I knew more. I wish this isn't the way that I knew or remembered her. And I hope that her family continues to remember those other things and not just this piece of it.
Go ahead.
Harper County is a historically safe community.
It is.
There's not a lot of crime here. Can you talk about, what this crime did to the community and now what this conviction will likely do for everyone?
So I think that's why this crime shook our community so much, is that we are historically a very safe crime. We are still a safe county. I want that to be clear. Harford County is a safe place to live and work and raise your family. However, at the end of the day, when these crimes get committed, we want criminals to understand you will be investigated, you will be found, you will be prosecuted, you will be convicted, and you will go to jail. That's what we want people to know from this. And I think the nature of this crime and that we don't generally have crimes like this is why it shook our community so deeply.
Any concerns about appeals from the defense?
I'm sure they will appeal on some issue. Generally they will in a case like this. I'm very confident in the rulings Judge Curtin made during this trial. I think she gave sound legal basis for all of the decisions she made. She's an incredibly smart and articulate judge, so she makes a good record. So I'm not concerned about appeal issues, and if that happens, we'll deal with it when the time comes.
And just give us some context. I know Harper County is a smaller county. I believe this trial was happening in one of the larger courtrooms that we have, and it was filled pretty much every single day. First day of jury selection, there wasn't room for the journalists there. So talk to me about, the size of this trial, the scope of this trial in comparison to maybe other trials and cases that you've covered or have been seen in this county.
Yeah, so we've had plenty of, we'll call them big trials. We have plenty of cases where courtrooms, have people in them watching. Generally, it's family and friends and things of that nature. But I think the attention on this case, again, goes to how this community was shook. And so there were community members who really were not related to any party in this case who wanted to see, how this trial was going to play out. So I think, again, that just goes to how this crime impacted our community.
Can you give any insight into why the 2 jurors were dismissed?
I cannot. The judge sealed that, so I can't really provide any information on that. Okay, thank you all. Yeah, we expect.
Oh,
Ticket.